welcome along to the On the Whistle podcast. I'm your host, Zain Nabi. Today we're sinking our teeth into the Ballon d'Or. I mean, it's as juicy as a South African steak. Joining me today, I'm so glad to say, are some old friends, some comrades in arms, some of the smartest men in African football. We have the mover, the shaker, the founder of the Best of Africa Awards, Francis Nkwayin. Francis, welcome to the pod. So good to see you, brother. How are you?
Very, very well. Good morning, and thank you very much for having me again in your company. It's been a long time since we sat down, and it was more than just the two of us. I'm super excited about the next person you want to talk about.
Exactly. And the man I call the encyclopedia of African football, the young gun, Alistair Howarth, doing his best Johnny Bravo impersonation since he's moved to the Highlands or the Lowlands of Scotland. Ali, so good to see you. We know you were pumping the content during the WAFCON and you were pumping the content during the Club World Cup. But you've been moving and shaking yourself in the start of the season and the end of the off season.
Yeah, Zain, it's been a. I was hoping to have a nice long rest after the Club World Cup and the WAFCON, and then I immediately had to move house, move all over the place. And so apologies, my kind of background's a bit chaotic. My life is a bit chaotic. I only just moved into a new house, but I'm raring to go for another season of African football. I mean, I've already shared with you guys my opinions on the Ballon d'Or off air, but I'm excited about it on air.
Well, look, either way, guys, look at my cup. This is the cup. I love you more. I love you more, regardless of how fiery this braai gets. Do you see that?
Is that the Ballon Ivoire?
It's the Ballon d'Or my wife gave me when we got married.
Most important trophy.
We're going to kick it off with the Ballon d'Or. We'll talk a little bit about CAF Champions League preliminary qualifiers, the drama and mess that is Kaizer Chiefs, and we'll round it off with the mailbag because Francis Nkwayin has still got TikTok talking with his Nigeria, South Africa comments. You know, we think we live in an ecosystem of 24, 48 hours, but with Francis, the tail is long. But let's start it off. The Ballon d'Or took place yesterday in Paris. The fact that Ousmane Dembele was in the house and not playing for PSG versus Olympique Marseille might have been a sign that he was going to win the Ballon d'Or. However, when I saw Ronaldinho go on stage, I was like, they're getting him on stage to give it to Lamine Yamal. But it was Ousmane Dembele. It's a fantastic season for PSG. I'll just read you the top 10, starting from 10 to 1st. We had Nuno Mendes, Gianluigi Donnarumma, the only goalkeeper, Cole Palmer, my guy, Kylian Mbappe, Achraf Hakimi at 6th, Rafinha at 5th, Mohamed Salah was the highest ranking African at 4th. We then had Vitinha, Lamine Yamal, and Ousmane Dembele in number 1. I mean, listen, I'll sort of start with my opinion. Look, I think Dembele, I'm not too unhappy with. He's had a fantastic season at PSG. Would I love to see Lamine Yamal take it? Yes. But did Barcelona perform as exceptionally as they should have the season before? No. Did Spain do anything great shakes? No, nothing that I can think of. So I think going to Dembele, no problem. The slight criticism I have of the Ballon d'Or is when I look at all the awards that take place, and there are 3 in my mind that are the mainstream ones. You have the Ballon d'Or, you have the FIFA Best Awards, and you have the Globe Soccer Awards, which now sort of work in that ecosystem. The one that I always place a little bit more emphasis is on the FIFA Best Awards. Why, you may ask? It's because I think it's one of the more transparent awards. You see how the national team captains vote. You see how the national team coaches vote. There's a fan vote. There's a little bit of media input. And I feel like it's a little bit more transparent. And by the way, it's every national association that isn't suspended that gets to cast a vote. With the Ballon d'Or, it's the top 100, which means it naturally skews to Europe in terms of the voting. And this was an award that once upon a time only used to reward the best European. Obviously, it's transformed and we've seen it rewards excellence. But do I think it's something to celebrate? Of course, because I remember when George Weah won and what that meant, not just for Liberians and people who support AC Milan, but what it meant to Africans as a whole. So I like the awards. I think they're good. I just wish there was a little bit more transparency. So I'm happy with Dembele as the winner. Let me throw it open. Anyone agree or care to disagree on that one?
Ali.
I think as I said, I spoke to you guys ahead of the pod, and I don't love the Ballon d'Or as a kind of as a institution in terms of the way they give things. Personally, I just I'm a bit of a pedant with these things. Like I don't love that idea of a individual award being given in a team sport, and I don't like the way it's kind of culturally been developed in terms of who deserves it. Obviously, Dembele is hard to argue with. He is kind of arguably been the best player in the world. I think for me, the one thing, and maybe this is my bias because I was and am a defender, but I don't like how the Ballon d'Or is so focused towards attacking players. And look, obviously, there's a reason for it. They're the ones that excite us. They're the ones that have those moments. But for instance, I think for me, especially coming from an African perspective, I've got to ask, what more could Achraf Hakimi have done to win the Ballon d'Or in this year? He had arguably the greatest season a defender has had. He's got what 9 goals, 12 assists as a defender, and he came up with huge goals. And that's one of the criteria of the Ballon d'Or is the importance of the goals you scored. And I looked in their Champions League run. I think if you look at their semifinals, quarterfinals, and final, I think he scored more goals than Dembele. And then when you look at the Club World Cup, he got the exact same amount of goals and more assists than Dembele, I think. So there's a sense of like, okay, he's a defender, and then in the big moments against the big teams, he's actually come up with the performance. Obviously, I know that's looking at just goals is a bit naive because Dembele got 2 assists in the final of the Champions League and was excellent. But also remember at the beginning of the season when PSG were struggling in the Champions League, aside from that Brest game, I think Dembele was really struggling. He wasn't looking very good, whereas Hakimi was excellent. Even in the games like against Atletico Madrid when they lost, Hakimi was really good. So for me, in terms of who wins it, look, I think you're kind of splitting hairs, but I think for me there's a question of how does Ashraf Hakimi not win
Okay, I think you gentlemen make extremely valid points, but I will start on a more generic one. So I would say, as somebody who organizes an award, dare I say, it's a very common thing for people to have opinions about how things could have been done different. And I think you have to applaud people for doing. And that's what I would say at this point in time. Before it was just L'Equipe. So literally it was a group of journalists who were looking at French football and then European football at large. And it grew and grew and grew, and it's become something bigger, so big that FIFA then created FIFA Best because they pulled their partnership with the Ballon d'Or to be able to create their own. In the same way, now we also have the global awards that you Zane spoke of. It's growth, meaning at no point in time have they said this is the perfect thing, but it's a group of people's opinion, and in this case, it's 100 of the best clubs in the West. Dare I say? But these are leagues, and these are and they have input from commentators in the game of variety. So going into the process, I think will always be subjective. It could always be better. So I'm not here to go. This is the litmus test for awards the world over. People have opinions about how the Oscars are valued. The whole point is it exists, and it comes with it a lot of prestige. So much so that people, players and agents, factor this into their contracts, saying my money changes if I'm in contention for, if I win. That's how much of a play it is. But I want to approach this morning with my African hat.
Mm-hmm.
Ousmane Dembele is not a name from Alsace. He is not from the Burgundy region of France, or you know. We know in this day and age where we have all this conversation around immigration, identity, and all of the challenges we have in our different societies on the continent as well as off. Um, what I saw yesterday was a young man who had been, at some point in time, I think was the second highest or the most expensive transfer that had
Well, he
happened.
went from Dortmund to Barcelona, right?
Dortmund, yes, to Barcelona. It didn't work out for him at that
Mm-hmm.
point in time, or he had a lot of injuries, and he'd been castigated with
Mm-hmm.
all the, what's the word, the adjectives that usually come with it when you carry a certain hue. or you're a member of a particular religion or a particular race. He got all those things. But somehow, somewhere, yesterday almost became this, you know what, when it's your destiny, when it's your portion, and most importantly, when maybe the world needs to be reminded of our humanities. We saw a young man, in spite the odds, in spite of all the odds, get the acclaim of his fellow professionals. Very few people would say he was undeserving. They may say somebody else could have, would have, but he won. And when he stood up to speak, he spoke of a journey that is very common today. A mother who had made a lot of sacrifices, come from the continent, moved to France. He grew up in the banlieues, like in the hood, not the place with the most opportunity, dare I say. So you put energy into sport, and a few people, including a friend from age 4 or 5, begins telling you you're the Ballon d'Or and you believe. And that friend is sitting in the room with you in tears, and that mother is there with you. There was something extremely human about it. And as an African, hearing Ousmane Dembele winning Ballon d'Or from Ronaldinho, who, mind you, also played for Paris Saint-Germain. Do not forget. So he is also there with two hats. Whether it was Lamal Yamin who was winning
Fair enough.
for Barcelona,
Fair
it
enough.
would be another African boy. So in contention, you had all of these amazing African stories manifesting themselves in a very uniquely 21st century way, where it's not about whether you're born in the continent, you live in the continent, you've grown up. It's from the continent to the world. Whether it was Hakimi had the option also to play for another country and made his choice, to represent Morocco. Lamar Yamin, the same thing. We know he has Guinea equatorial connections. Some even say Cameroonian. Even if it was Cole Palmer, again, it's this migrant history reminding us at every turn that there is a shared humanity that we have, and we very often forget. And all we want to celebrate here is the entertainment of a game. And so, yes, the defenders are extremely important, but the people who really entertain us are the guys who bang in the goals.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do it with a little bit of flair. And so we can say, why don't we also have a Ballon d'Or for defender, like we now have the Golden Glove for the goalkeeper? We could say defender, midfielder, and striker. And we could value them all in the same way. But these guys on their platforms, they have their own coefficient that works for them. And there's nothing stopping us from creating the OTW award that says Ali is gonna give us the coefficient for how we value defenders, and we already have one for keepers. Is your clean sheet maybe, and we could maybe spread it out a little bit more. I think they've even added this thing about the team of the year, which they gave to Paris Saint Germain, which is about what you win and all that kind of stuff. It's nice, but it was also beautiful to see the validation they're giving to the women's game, the quality of goals that all in all, it's growing. And the more we celebrate, the better we are. And there's always room for anybody else to do their own. If this isn't good enough, we can do something else. But we can still applaud that some people have put an effort, come up with their own formula for how to identify and celebrate people who give us a lot of joy. And we could split hairs about whether um, it could be, should be, but I think this morning, Africa is winning. In that top 10 you ran out at the very beginning, so many sons of this continent, wherever they may find themselves, sons of our continent, are shining. Whether it's Mendes with Portugal, you have no question. If he was walking down the road and a far right guy was going to pick somebody to shoot, he might shoot him. I'm not wishing him that, but what I mean is like we can split hairs about what flag you play under when you're representing for FIFA. But in that top 10, I believe it's seven sons of this continent, 6 or 7. It's something for us to be able to look at and say, we have come a very, very long way. And when it's talent for talent, people are saying, people are voting, people are acknowledging that there is something exceptional in, I don't know, in the water, dare I say.
Let me come in, if you don't mind, Francis, and say, look, and Ali, this is a slight response to one of your points earlier. It's always harder to create than defend. So I'll always lean on the side of the attacker, right? Because I think it's easier to make yourself hard to beat, right? In football, you can do that versus creating. Do I love Ashraf Hakimi? Yes. Do I think he can create fantastically? Yes. I mean, he's. I mean, look, he's defender by name, right? But he's almost that Danny Alves role where you know he's going to go up and he's going to give you so much value going forward. Or maybe a poor man's Achraf Hakimi is our friend from Liverpool who's just joined Real
Alexander
Madrid,
Arnold.
Alexander Arnold. Courtney would probably kill me for saying that, but.
Nothing poor about that. You seen his contract.
He's doing
There's
well.
more money than Hakimi. What are you talking about?
But who would you pick? Who would you pick at right back?
Right now, Hakimi, without a doubt.
Jimmy, come on. That's
Yeah.
not even like.
Even Real Madrid aren't picking Alexander
Yeah,
Arnold.
Well, that's
exactly.
the point, right? Which is, I don't mean to make light of him because I'm a big fan of his, but,
Yes, yes.
so I take your point on Hakimi, but like, I think you're a bit too football purist, Ali, when you're sitting there with your views on how it should be done. And, I'm about the equality of the awards and why there are only 100 predominantly Europeans voting, whereas Francis has found a nice middle road because, I don't know, we haven't seen the Best of Africa Awards selection committees publicly published. So
Nah.
that's what I'm going to push him for next time. I'm joking, Francis. I'm joking.
You can.
We'll be demanding the day after we're writing
Mandates, yeah.
an
I mean, like
op-ed on
something
the
beautiful that
Ballon.
could be done.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but
So something beautiful that could be done, like just to speak to what you just said. Imagine actually having a Ballon d'Or 11, for example, and you're saying we're picking the coach and the system that coach works to. For example, hypothetically speaking, if you were an Amorim fan, then you'd be looking for a 3-4-3.
I think he's a long way from that, Francis.
No, no,
Tell
I'm
you.
not just look. You shouldn't be speaking too much either. So sorry. But I'm just saying, like, so, like, we have Luis Enrique, for example. So you say, what style does he play?
Mm,
And then you go, okay, if he's doing a 4-3-3, then we're saying we're looking for one keeper, four defenders, three midfielders, and three more offensive-minded players, or I don't know, whatever the phrase. And then you're saying this 11, you're almost going post for post and saying this is the best person in this position. Almost then you can say it's like having a CEO award and you then award the COO or your CFO, and the financial officer is going, but I can't do the job of the CEO. And then there's a chairman sitting somewhere or a chairperson sitting somewhere going like, do they understand without me? So sometimes these things will always no. So when we say player of the year, it's almost like, but I think when you remember how the French started it, when they said Ballon d'Or, they were literally talking about that ball and saying the person who bangs in the most goals. And that's where it started. And then all of a sudden it became, okay, what happens when two players have scored the same number of goals? And then they started like splitting hairs there and then going, okay, how did you score? And then they arrived at, did you score in important games? And then it became all of that. And now it's become, I don't know. What do you represent? What's your social media feed? And I mean, like, even, I mean, I love the young boy at Barcelona. But in all honesty,
minimal.
yes, in spite of if you're going stats for stat, he shouldn't be there. If you're looking at the numbers of goals scored and all of that. But it's because he brings this X factor. There's an excitement to his game that is pulling a whole new generation of people into the sport again. And so they have to acknowledge that he carries weight in some regard, but stat for stat, even at Barcelona, Rafinha is, in my opinion,
Hmm.
and if you go into the stats, he's scoring more goals than him and more assists than him. But when you see an 18-year-old boy, or when he was 17, doing what he's doing, you have to say,
Yes.
wow,
What an exceptional
that's
talent.
then what would you be doing at 27?
Yes.
Like you can only imagine. Or you could do like Michael Owen. Maybe he's peaking. Michael Owen was winning his Ballon d'Or and he was 19 or something silly like that. And he never then did much after that. I mean, he was okay. He wasn't like crap.
No, but yeah,
Yeah,
I never reached those heights.
exactly. So
It,
maybe Lamine is the same thing. Maybe we should be looking at that and saying, hey, everybody says he might win it next year. But how do you know? He might start having his
guarantees.
run of injuries now.
Yeah.
Or and then we go like, oh wow, Ansu Fati. It wasn't long ago he was on the list, and now he's on loan at Monaco in like team reject or I don't know what they. It's like a disassembly of talent that everybody knows from Pogba to him.
Mm.
It's a club now that is playing home to people who, and that's where Dembele could have been. That's why I started by saying let's celebrate it. He didn't. He found something. Whether it was his marriage to his sweetheart, becoming a father, I don't know what it was.
Back in
Just
France.
believing in his people, or his people believing in him, or serendipity, whatever it was, he hasn't gone down the could have been.
Yes.
He's won.
Yes.
So let's be happy for him, and let's all take inspiration from that. That it could be us in whatever thing that we are doing.
What
Yeah.
I'll say, Zayn, on this is on Francis' point about Africa being represented, and I don't know if this is an issue for us because in terms of the African nations represented in the top 10, I think you've got Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, Equatorial Guinea, Cape Verde, Morocco, Cameroon. I think those are all the countries that, and Egypt, of course, all represented. All I'm saying, Zayn, is we've got the Arab speakers, we've got the francophones, we've got the lusophones, we've even got the one Spanish speaking country in Africa. Where are the anglophone countries, Zayn? Where is the Bafana kid who's grown up in
Haven't
London
you
or
listened?
Paris?
Haven't you listened to previous podcasts? Francis will tell you that it's the collective, not the talent, that gets you there. And South
That's right.
Africa's collective. But
Amen.
give
Amen.
us time with Lyle Foster. Give us time with
Yeah.
Lyle Foster.
Exactly. I'm just
Amen.
saying the Anglophone immigrants are not doing the work where these Francophones and Lusophones are doing the good
Well,
work.
I don't want to say where the voters come from or where the headquarters of the Ballon d'Or are. You know,
Ooh.
kidding. There's nothing. The final question I have before we transition onto other things is, was this maybe Mohamed Salah's last chance to win a Ballon d'Or? I mean, he's obviously been nominated before. He's arguably had better seasons, but um, given no Messi, no Ronaldo, Haaland wasn't firing, Mbappe wasn't doing anything great. Was this perhaps his best opportunity to win it?
When you looked at the vote count, that's where I felt a little bit sad, if that's the appropriate word, because I expected him to at least be in the top three, given the season his club and he himself had, and for the consistency through the years. But if there's anything I have known is football has a tremendous way of rarely being kind on reputation alone. And sometimes you need to play a game. And that's where I would say maybe with Mo, um, the the way they move, I think they sometimes miss the human connect. Like his stats are beautiful and they almost leave it to speak for itself. And then he doesn't do the other things. And there are some other things. It's the age in which we live. It's what your profile is like beyond your core fan base. Because yes, I'm not saying he doesn't have people following him on socials and people aren't interested in his world and doesn't. But I think he stays very comfortably within his comfort zone. And as such, it's almost like you need to go to find information about him, and it doesn't come and meet you. So you don't see a lot of cross pollination, even post games. He's one of these people who, like, if you really pay attention, you see him. He's usually hugging the opposition team players, like some of the non-stars that he'll spend. But there's nothing really built around that to remind that there's this human side of him that is also quite appealing. Because as we started talking about, people like our young brother at Barcelona is this extra football character. It has its part to play, and that's why a Dembele winning was almost like this is one very almost reclusive dude, but you always still find these little funny snippets that other people seem to put out about him. So many other people have these amazing human stories about him, and so there was almost like a sympathy but an empathy for him because of the jeopardy of his career. So it's almost like, man, this guy could have easily faded away. He was going to Paris Saint Germain for almost 100 million euros less than he was bought by Barcelona. Like they paid, I think it was like 40 million. They paid for him to go to Paris Saint Germain, and he turned up and did not set Paris Saint Germain alight either. Had a very, I think it was 4 goals or something really like in his first season. But when Mbappe left, and ironically he was leaving to go get his Ballon d'Or at Real Madrid, it was almost like Enrique in management, the Paris Saint-Germain movement, their fan base, they almost rallied around this dude and created a persona that
Mm.
made even non-Paris Saint-Germain, non-French, non-African, any of his traditional bases. He just became this guy who people kind of like rooted for. Mo Salah has never really had that extra element. It I remember like 4 or 5 years ago, there was the beginning of something around his charitable work, like so even like with us, and then they went very silent on it, and so it was almost like, okay, we know him. If you're a Liverpool fan, yes, Mo Salah is the business. But even in the Premier League, if you go to Arsenal and you say, would you take Mo Salah over Saka? They would probably say no.
Crazy.
Mm.
Yet the stats are like chalk and cheese. And I mean, like, it's crazy. Like, everybody just assumes when he leaves Liverpool, he'll go to Saudi Arabia. You almost don't imagine, like, it's almost like you're not hearing Barcelona saying, we'll need him to just get us over the line. You're not hearing Bayern Munich saying, we'll need him. They did that even with Mane's. But
Mm.
there's something that I think in that public perception of him, where there's something missing in his team. And that's why I think he continues to run shy of the very top when it comes to these more public kind of like voting structures or that kind of stuff. That's my opinion.
Which is why, I think you're spot on, Francis, and I think it's a shame because, and in many ways, it points to the what I see as part of the flaw. Because I think you're right; it's such an important element of how these things work these days, and I don't love it. A lot of people do like it, or but it is what it is. But I think it's frustrating because Salah, I think, has been a victim of his own success because I think he's been the most consistent player, arguably in
Mhm.
Europe over the last 5, 6, 7 years. But then on that point is for me, what frustrates me is a bit is Salah. I think his personality is not someone who wants to be out on social media yet. Like you said, he's such a recluse. The only things he posts are about football or whenever his family puts up his Christmas tree every Christmas, which I know is always a point of fun for a lot of people. But he's not someone who wants to have a big profile, and I think that's a shame. But I think the other side of that is he's also someone who has to be very careful because unlike a Dembele or a Saka or these people who are coming from these same countries, is Salah is not just juggling his kind of profile in the UK. He's not looking just to an audience there. He's also looking to an audience in Egypt because he is huge in Egypt. And let's not forget how big a population wise Egypt is. It's like 2 or 3 times the size of the UK, if not more, and how football mad it is. I mean, remember the stat was always that Mohamed El Neni was always Arsenal's most followed player on his social media because of Egypt. But obviously, the kind of social and political values of Egyptians are so different from people in the UK and in France and in Western Europe. So I think he is almost being punished for being this son of two cultures because he loves living in the UK. I think he kind of loves being in the UK. That's one of the reasons why he didn't go to Saudi this summer. I wouldn't say he's not British, but he really has embraced living in the UK. But he's also juggling this identity of being Egyptian, of having these followers, having the weight of one of the kind of craziest, biggest football nations in the world. So I think he's almost like there's an element of it's his personality, and B, he's kind of almost a victim of not coming from the West because he has to juggle these kind of multiple, as a lot of other players from these kind of countries do. If Lamine Yamal was Equatorial Guinean, and playing for the Equatorial Guinea national team, he has to consider what am I saying in regards to the regime? What am I saying in regards to the people of Equatorial Guinea? Like there's suddenly a whole different thing they have to juggle. And for me, I think it's beautiful because I think these players, and I think there's almost a kind of wonderful way in which we've gotten better at it, where we've been able to bridge those gaps. Because I think a lot of these players have shown that you can do that and you can toe those lines, but it is more difficult for someone like Salah. To your point, Zane, about his was it his last chance? For me, this
Mm.
year is his last chance because this year is when it's all set up perfectly for him because this is the first time in a long time that we've had both an AFCON and a World Cup in the same year. I know it used to be a big thing, but since they changed it back in 2013, it's not happened. We're now heading towards that. So he can win the Ballon d'Or, but It requires essentially Egypt winning the AFCON, Liverpool doing well in the Champions League, not necessarily winning it, but either winning the Premier League or getting to the semi-finals of the Champions League, and Egypt having a solid World Cup because they'll be at the World Cup. I don't think they've quite sealed their qualification, but that draw against
They're
Burkina
close, though.
1 point.
has done that. So I think this is his last year. So I'll hand it back to Francis.
No, I think you've made an amazing point. It's really true. What I was going to add to that is that I was not to add, it's almost like a slight counter. I was going to say his character reminds me a lot of Messi, and a lot of people had accepted that there's a space that this guy will operate in that is very different from where Ronaldo will operate. So Ronaldo's like extrovert. You're going to see everything, my cars, my watches, my da 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 da. And I understand. I wasn't saying he has to become political or anything, but I'm saying like a more intentional thing to carve out a presence beyond Liverpool and Egypt cannot hurt. And it does not have to be political. It does not have to be you're touching on sensitive things. It can just be, you know what, it's, dare I say, it's London Fashion Week and your wife likes fashion. I don't know, whatsoever it is. Or there are a couple of movie premieres that happen to have some superstars. And
Mhm.
you cross a little bit because Messi was never known for being this guy who had opinions on anything. But the Hollywood guys all knew his name. What I'm saying is that I said Mo Salah is not he's not crossed like his core, and his core is Liverpool, then Egypt, then Liverpool, and then after that it's kind of like if I still feel like if I landed in Togo or I went to South Africa tomorrow and I said, who do you think was hardest done by with the Ballon d'Or yesterday? I think the guy in Cape Town or in Joburg might say to me, "Oh, Lamine Yamal," if you know what I mean. Like, and you'd be thinking, like,
I do.
"Did you see Mo's stats?" But there isn't that connection, and that's what I mean. And I'm just saying, like, just to push beyond the comfort zone, and it takes a team. It's not the person's work. It's that you employ the people who do that part of the game for you, and it's just connecting you to things, putting you in rooms or sitting you next to people outside of the immediacy of it's because you're a Liverpool fan, so we're gonna hang out. So many people became fans of Barcelona because of Messi,
Hmm.
if you know what I mean. So even Liverpool should be recruiting more fans, especially now that they've been having success on the pitch because of Mo Salah. But you get a feeling that there's just that little element. That's what I was speaking about. That something is just missing in that marketing play where and I think that's where he then suffers. It's got nothing to do with his talent or his stats, but his profile doesn't go beyond certain spaces. And he could be happy with it. But I know he's a winner. And this Ballon d'Or thing, it's crazy. Whatever we think about it, it means a lot to these guys. And he knows, okay, I had the challenge of being around the Ronaldo Messi time, but as soon as they go, I should be the one who's leading because he was matching them for numbers. But somehow everybody went Messi, Ronaldo, just a little bit above. And then they go. And immediately the conversation was like, oh, is it Mbappe, Dembele, who are the next heirs? And nobody
Haaland.
mentioned his name
Mm.
except Liverpool fans or Egyptians. And it was almost like, somebody needs to be having the tea with the guys in the press and reminding them that there's a Mo Salah. And it should not be the Liverpool press office. It should not be the Egyptian Federation. It should be people who connect with him, whether it's through brands, and these things it could be the brand ambassador for Mercedes, I don't know, and do a couple of those adverts. And it would just opening them up to other people
Sure.
and that's what I mean. And I think that's where he's come up a little bit short.
Gentlemen, a fantastic discussion around that. I'm sure we could go on. But just before we hit the mailbag, Ali, I know there is some good CAF preliminary round games. There's some Confed Cup stuff. Um, Maybe you just want to run us through some of those headlines. Is my namesake, although he spells his name with one B and I'm two B's, Mr. Nazruddin Nabi at Chiefs, out of Chiefs, still there, not there?
Well,
departing.
he's certainly half there, I think, is what we would say. Not there and not there. He's not there, but he's technically still under contract. Like, I mean, obviously, we don't want to talk about too much about whether he's still in, because he is still technically there. Wait, obviously, to get Lawrence's kind of nitty gritty expertise on all things South African football, but he definitely wasn't helped by Kaiser Chiefs' result at the weekend when they lost away to Kabuskor in Angola. And Zane, let me tell you, this is arguably one of my favorite parts of the footballing year is the CAF Champions League, but more so the CAF Confederation Cup qualifiers. I mean, I remember a few years ago doing a long article I wrote about Binga FC, who are a second division Malian club who made it to the final round of qualifiers in the CAF Confederations Cup, and they had to drive to Sierra Leone from Bamako, and they had to drive to Cote d'Ivoire, and then they had to fly. The first time any of the players had been on a flight, they had to fly to Zambia, and they eventually lost to, I think it was Zanaco, one of the big Zambian clubs. But I mean, for instance, in the qualifiers, yeah, you have Kabuskor beating Kaiser Chiefs, which would be a huge upset and a massive, massive disappointment if Kaiser Chiefs didn't make it into the Confederations Cup, particularly given how well kind of Pirates have done in the Champions League recently, and kind of that gap opening up. Same with Sundown. But also elsewhere in the Confederations Cup, you've had a few derbies. You've had, the Kenyans. I think it was Nairobi City playing against the Somali team, Mogadishu. You had the Nairobi United playing NEC from Uganda. I love these kind of small matchups. And then for me, I don't know if this has ever happened before, is Generation Foot, obviously Mane's team, Lamine Camara, the team that's developed and is developing so much of Senegal's greatest talent, are into the Confederation Cup this year, and they're playing against another academy. Currently they drew 1-1 in the first game against Académie de FAD from Cote d'Ivoire. So I don't know if, and maybe someone can fact check me here, if an academy has ever played an academy in continental top flight football. Because if it is, I want to hear about it. I want to find out about it, because I think that'd be really interesting. But I think for me, this is the kind of time of year that I absolutely love. In terms of the Champions League, I don't think there's been as many big upsets. We've had a couple draws where maybe a team should have gone through. Jamus from South Sudan drew with Al Hilal from Sudan, which again, a big kind of Sudanese derby. Although even when we've seen currently when the national teams played, it's been less of a derby and more a chance for the South Sudanese to actually support their brothers in north of the border. So I think in terms of the Champions League, there's been less interesting results, but the CAF Confederations Cup, particularly with that loss for Kaiser Chiefs, had been interesting, really, really interesting. But I just wanted to bring it up real quick. Obviously, we'll probably touch on it more once the second round has happened and we actually know who's through to the next round of qualifiers. But I just love the Confederation Cup qualifiers. Like, it's just peak football on the continent.
Well, listen, thank you for giving us a snapshot there. And the wonderful thing you'll agree with, Francis, is when Ali tells us these stories, he takes us to Bamko, or he takes us
Exactly. He has an absolute talent,
we
an
feel like
absolute
we're
gift.
taking our first flight.
I wish. I would love it.
So thank you.
It's so beautiful. You always capture it amazingly well, very picturesquely. And you get a feeling that you were there and living it.
Yes.
And how you know these things always blows my mind.
Our
Always.
encyclopedia. Huh? Who
For
needs
real.
Wikipedia? We got
He'd
Alipedia.
probably tell you 3 players from the team who happen to share a godfather. And you're like, how'd you know that?
Well, listen, lads, it's been a fantastic pod. We're going to use the last few minutes to go over some of the mailbag. And listen, for those of you listening out there, please let us know what you think about the Ballon d'Or. Let us know what you think about the CAF Confed Cup or the CAF Champions League or the preliminary rounds we're having now. Do you agree? Was Mohamed Salah hard done by because maybe the right messaging wasn't done around him? Should Yamal have got it over Dembele? OTW_podcast on X, on Instagram and TikTok. And you can just search for the On the Whistle podcast on YouTube or Google. You'll come to us. It's us and those gooners who have the same name these days. But just hit the mailbag. And we had some lovely comments from you from last week. A lot of the discussion was around what will happen with South Africa and their qualification. Will FIFA sanction them after FIFA announced an investigation? However, worth noting that Lesotho put their complaint in late. So here's some of the responses from you. We had Vuyani and Pafa say, rules are rules. Late filing does not nullify the rule. Safa should have known better. We had Sanderla Dax Ziwidir say, remember the last World Cup qualifiers? South Africa were robbed on their last match against Ghana. Lesotho didn't complain in time, but they're going to get the points deducted. Nigeria scored a goal with their hand. FIFA, the one, just turned a blind eye. That in reference to the draw between Bafana Bafana and the Super Eagles in the last round of African qualifying, and the handball goal, if I'm correct, was Bassie's goal.
Yeah. Can I just say, Zaid, real quick? There is a tremendous difference in injustice between a goal deflecting off a player's hand, a poor offsides call. Yes, they both happened against Bafana, and I know you'll rile against that. There's a huge difference between that and a country forgetting that their player is suspended and playing him and then being deducted points retrospectively. In terms of injustices, just two very small kind of narrow referee decisions that they got wrong are not on the same level as Bafana actually playing not a random player they wouldn't have known about, arguably their best player. Sorry, I just not to get too.
It's okay. I think you're getting a sense from the South Africans that we was robbed,
yes.
And they're robbing us everywhere.
I feel like the narrative needs to be corrected a little bit from a non-South African.
Sure.
But can I ask a question that on the day of the game, didn't the officials realize when the names came out that this player shouldn't be on the pitch from the other side?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's a fair question.
It's
and this is the kind of administrative, because normally when you're preparing your game, you know the players you may be up against, and you look at the ones who are either injured or suspended, and you put them out, and then you say, this is who we may be facing. So how two teams and two federations didn't get that right, and then the organizing body in CAF are unable, three separate administrative blocks were unable to know. As far as I'm concerned, this level of incompetence is too common in our space, and I'll leave it at that.
No, there's
Francis,
very little I disagree with there, Francis.
Not just CAF, but FIFA as well. Right?
That's like FIFA World Cup qualifier.
Well, when I say CAF is FIFA.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, they're handling in this zone on behalf of FIFA.
Yeah.
They're the federation. FIFA is just a confederation.
I think it would it be so hard? Like, look, ultimately it's South Africa's responsibility. They're the ones being punished. But would it be so hard for FIFA to, have an automated system where it says, okay,
nice and simple. Yeah,
because they have to know it already because
exactly.
they have to.
They're the enforcers.
Them. Exactly.
Yes.
So
they're the enforcers, and that's why even before the game, you give them your team sheet, and then they go, "Oh, this guy's not supposed to be on the pitch." We check your passports. We check your this person qualifies to represent you, but we also have a little list here that tells us who's suspended. It's not that hard a thing. You gave the red card, you gave the suspension, you gave the fine. You collected the money, you did all that part, and then you forgot to say, "Oh, that guy should." Or were you hoping that they play them, and then you make more money by fining them again?
And again, South Africa are not the only ones who come from FIFA injustice. Let's not forget that Equatorial Guinea could have been in a position to qualify for this World Cup, but
nobody's giving them back their points.
Yeah, exactly. But because they've won those first two games when Emilio Nsue scored, and now he and they are being punished because they didn't.
Nobody's giving them back the points
in 2012.
Yeah,
and yet
but then they've come along and said, okay, no, actually, no, nothing wrong with it. Yeah. But you don't reinstate the points that you took of them.
Yeah. We're with you. I think talking about injustices, that is for me the biggest one of the lot.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to run through a few more viewer comments as we round up the show. We have Senzo Memela 1311 say, "This is not the time to talk about fears. South Africa has the best coach in Hugo Bruce playing good football. Let us talk about possibilities, not the opposite." Then we have Victor Cobham 4147 say, and he goes into the actual rules around sanctioning and docking points, saying FIFA can impose a sanction without an official complaint being lodged, even beyond the 24-hour window. This is called the exceptional clause. The Nigeria versus Algeria 2017 World Cup qualifier in case as an example. Rules are rules. We had Raf Cannon, who is a loyal listener to this pod. Raf, we love hearing from you. Raf said, another fantastic episode again. I personally do not believe that it's fair to ask for someone's job unless there's proof they've repeated this error again and again. Raf making this comment in relation to calls for, Vincent Seka to potentially be sacked. He's the Bafana manager, who would have been in charge of knowing who should have been able to take the field or not. Qualifying is still in South Africa's hand, 3 points deduction or not. And then he commented on Sekhukhune United, who currently top the Premier Soccer League, and he said, 6 games is too early to be talking about a contender. 15 is still early in my books. But you have a stronger idea of what the team is made of by then. Best of luck to Sekhukhune. Anyone but Cardozo right now, obviously in reference to the Mamelodi Sundowns coach. Gentlemen, as you can see, lots of different comments, lots of wonderful comments out there from our community who we love to hear from. Please, guys, don't be afraid to post your comments here on whatever platform you consume. Francis, Ali, love chopping it up. We'll see you around soon to do it again. I'm sure there'll be another awards we can get our teeth sunk into. Maybe the best of Africa.
Maybe.
Oh.
Thank you.